my first question is, we all think we know what we're talking about when we talk about hormones until you actually think about what actually is a hormone. What substance is a hormone?
That is such a great question. Thank you, Jenny. So happy to be in conversation with you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. What is a hormone? That's a great place to start. So a hormone are the body's chemical signals. They're like your body's internal text messages. You see, we're made up of 30 trillion cells. And disparate and distant cells need to be able to communicate with each other and talk to each other so they all do the right thing at the right time and on cue. The best analogy that I can think of for hormones is as follows. We have glands in the body. We've heard of glands. Pituitary gland, thyroid gland, adrenal glands. Glands are like radio transmitters, and they transmit these hormone signals. These hormone signals travel in the bloodstream to a target cell, and when they hit that target cell, they convey a message. Okay, let's talk about a really famous one, GLP-1, right? That's a good starting point. Everybody knows about GLP-1. Everybody wants to sit next to me at dinner parties, right, and talk to me about GLP-1. Very popular guest now. GLP-1 is transmitted by the gut. It goes into the blood and up to the brain's appetite center and says, you're full, you can stop, right? So that's an example of a gland producing a hormone signal, travels to its target, conveys a message.
There you go. Nice, concise answer there. But then how do they work? So they are signals sent around the body, but then they have different timescales. Some of them work over a lifetime. Some of them work over a matter of, minutes or mealtime to mealtime. How does the timing work? Exactly right. So some will work in a split second, right? So let's think about the hormone adrenaline released by the adrenal glands. You know that feeling when you're climbing a ladder and you lose your footing and you get that, or like you're in the supermarket and you suddenly realize, like, where's my kid? They've wandered off, and you're just kind of really adrenalized for 10 seconds trying to find them. That happens really, really quickly, right? Adrenaline is released super fast, makes your heart beat, makes your brain alert. You get that kind of wired feeling, okay? But other hormones, yes, absolutely, their effect is much more long-term. Like, for example, at puberty, the ovaries will release the hormone estrogen that will travel up to pubertal breast tissue, stimulate it to grow, but that obviously doesn't happen overnight. That's part of a much longer term master plan. Okay, so hormones are moment to moment, but they've also read the memo on life's master plan. So how do they know? Like, how did my ovaries know when I was, God, I don't know, like 11? I don't remember when I started puberty. How did my ovaries know to send those signals? Is there a kind of part of your brain that is permanently keeping time over your lifespan? Exactly right. So we have a gland in the brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, as we call it, the master gland. And it controls your life's major milestones. It has a day-to-day, moment-to-moment effect, but it also controls the major milestones: fertilization, pregnancy, puberty, menopause, and so on. So how does it know? So essentially, throughout childhood, the master gland signaling, when it comes to us going through puberty, is sleeping, silent. And that keeps the child's brain and body in a childlike state. And it, exactly as you say, Jenny, from 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, those signals kind of begin to wake up. And it's those signals from the brain that start signaling to the ovaries, or in men start signaling to the testicles, and that's when puberty kicks in. You see, it's all perfectly planned. The endocrinology, which is the science of hormones, is a relatively new field in terms of science? In terms of medicine and science, we only discovered well, I can't say we, I can't take any credit for this, but the first hormone was only discovered in 1902. So if you think about it, there'd been lots done before that about things like the brain and the heart and so on. Perhaps that's because those were parts of the body we could see, and you could dissect those bits or take them apart and try to work out how they were functioning.
But this idea of chemical signals racing around the body was a very new concept. 1902, the first one was discovered, a message between the gut and the pancreas. 1905, hormones were first named. So it's a pretty new specialty. Very interesting. Before hormones were discovered, people with hormone problems could not be diagnosed, right? And so people with misfiring hormones, right? Of course, this was happening before 1902, were considered either mysterious or, at worst, some were found in circuses. Yeah, they're called freaks or locked up in institutions. So it wasn't until 1905 when the knowledge finally came through, the idea that we have these hormone signals and that they could go wrong and they could be treated. So it's a very, very new concept.
And with that knowledge came the idea that it might be possible to control them. And we are very into the idea of controlling them or hacking them or finding some way to master them. Should we be doing that?
No.
No. Well, we'll get into that in more detail. But I guess my first question is, in relation to that, is one of the lovely things about your book is about how much being an endocrinologist is about being a detective, that it's an art as much as a science, that you have a human being in front of you that has a problem and you have to work out, is this problem related to their hormones? If so, which ones? And could it be explained by other things? So how do you have the necessary skills in order to be able to do that successfully?
It's exactly right. Because our hormones control really every moment of our lived experience, as well as these major milestones. The symptoms of hormones that aren't working well can also be symptoms of kind of life's wear and tear. So, for example, we rely on the hormone cortisol to make us energetic, to get us out of bed in the morning, right? So if you don't have enough cortisol in the system, you can feel extremely tired, exhausted. But cortisol deficiency is really quite rare, and I think most of us in this room know what tiredness feels like, right? And that's where the detective piece comes in, because feeling tired in of itself, if you're thinking of cortisol deficiency, isn't enough. So you're also looking for other symptoms, but you're also, I think what's really lovely about the work I get to do is you get to find out about people's lives. So you have to ask lots and lots of questions about what's going on in their lives to also try to understand what's brought you here today. So the detective piece is very real, and it keeps it very interesting.
You mentioned cortisol there, and I think a lot of people here will be thinking, oh, yes, I know about cortisol. Cortisol's bad, isn't it? Cortisol's bad for your health. Is cortisol bad?
No, cortisol has really been recast as this baddie hormone, right? And on social media, there's this idea that my cortisol's running too high, and that's why I've put on a bit of weight, or I'm feeling low, or, and I've got to take this supplement or do this hack or, do this change to my routine to get cortisol down. First thing to say is these things don't work. The second thing to say is you don't want to push cortisol too low because, well, it's not possible through these hacks. But let's say a hack came out when it became possible. You push cortisol too low, you'll end up in A&E. You need cortisol to live, right? And cortisol deficiency can be fatal. So cortisol, like all hormones, is neither a goodie nor a baddie. It's perfectly calibrated in the body to give us energy, to get us out of bed, keep blood pressure up, keep blood sugar stable, get us through stressful events with a bit of sort of sharpened thinking and, va-va-voom. And it's just doing what it should be doing. And the thing with the hacks and the hype and the hashtags is that we all sometimes feel something's not quite right. And it's easy to major on, it must be cortisol that's going wrong. But actually, it's very unusual that it would be. Some hormones have bad names, like cortisol. Others are kind of imbued with superpowers at the moment. Estrogen and testosterone in particular. And does that worry you as much as certain ones being the baddies? In the sense that hormones are phenomenally powerful, hence the upsurge in interest in them.
Yeah.
And because they're so powerful, they can come with powerful promises that if you take this, or that you'll feel sort of livelier and better and thinner and happier and all the things we all want. The body's hormones are so exquisitely calibrated that if we introduce hormones into the body that the body doesn't need, you take testosterone but you did not have a testosterone deficiency, the body is super smart. And the body will say, wow, there's all this extra testosterone kicking around. I don't need to make any of my own, right? And we're seeing that more and more with this interest in, for example, testosterone. You take testosterone that you didn't necessarily need, and your body's own testosterone production switches off. So that's where we end up in a situation where the power of hormones, this idea that, we're so in control, we can control everything. Our hormones control us. And most of the time, they know exactly what they're doing.
So in the detective work that you do as an endocrinologist, is this now something that you have to factor in? That when someone's coming and talking to you, they might be buying something online, or they might have read something on social media that's caused them to do something that is an added extra that could be explaining their symptoms?
Yeah, it's a whole new kind of piece of the detective work, because before the internet and online pharmacies and a bit of under the bench stuff at the gym, the idea was, I'm going to try and find out if the body has gone wrong in some way. But now you also have to factor in, well, is there any other piece to this? Have you bought something? Now, you might wonder, well, if somebody comes along saying they don't feel well, but they know they're buying thyroid hormones online or testosterone at the gym, well, A, why would they come and say, oh, it's very mysterious, I don't feel well? But also, are they going to declare that straight off the bat? Very rarely. So then you can end up in a bit of a game of hide and seek, and you've got to be really, really careful, and you've got to have the evidence to then ask the patient, ultimately, because if you say to a patient, are you sure you're not taking something, you can fracture that therapeutic relationship quite badly. So, it's a whole other bit that wasn't as apparent when I was training a long time ago.
And is there more of a demand for hormones, in hormone supplements? If you've got people coming to you, do you ever get the feeling that they are wanting you to prescribe things because they've read that it will give them superpowers?
Yeah, exactly that. So there's a few bits to that. So firstly, there's so much information out there, and I totally understand why people come asking or saying, I think I need this and that. I totally get that. The second thing is there's the rise in home testing. So previously somebody would come and then you would organise as the doctor the diagnostics based on the story they had told you. You see, tests, blood tests or scans or anything else, they cannot tell the story. Only the patient can tell their story, and then those tests can confirm what you think might be going on. Now what's not uncommon is somebody comes and they've said, I saw a test poster on the tube or on social media, and I've got these results and these numbers are all in red, and now I'm really, really freaked out. What's going on with my hormones?
And what do you think about that, those private companies that advertise on the tube? Is there a place for them?
I would be very cautious. I really would be very cautious, because hormone testing is very nuanced. It can be that you need to do it at a certain time of day. Are you fasting? Are you taking other medications, et cetera, et cetera? And all of these things will influence the results. So even as hormone specialists, on tests that we have ordered, we sometimes get back numbers and we say, eh? And we'll sit around for a really long time debating the results between ourselves. Like, we really know how to live it up as endocrinologists. And even we're just really, befuddled sometimes. But so these numbers are tricky to interpret, even when done in a more, maybe orthodox way. So I'd be wary.
One of the things that really struck me from reading your book was that there was a time before certain hormones were discovered where loads of people would just die because of problems with their hormones, and insulin is the big one. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So insulin is the hormone that you release after eating to clear sugar from your blood. And it's a really quite magical idea. Like, I think many of you will have had something to eat here this afternoon, and your blood sugar will have risen. Your pancreas releases insulin. The insulin clears that sugar from your blood. How much did you even think about that? Like, you ate the food, you probably said that was a good meal, and then assumed your body would take care of the rest. So insulin is absolutely fundamental to life, because if you can't clear sugar from your blood after eating, the blood sugar rises and rises and rises. That obviously makes you very unwell. Before 1921, children diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is what happens is the body wipes out the ability to produce insulin in those children. Children diagnosed before 1921, their parents knew it was a terminal diagnosis, right? That their children might live 6, maybe 12 months at best. The discovery of insulin was one of the spectacular medical breakthroughs of the 20th century. What happened was these children who were almost dead were given an injection of insulin, this newly discovered hormone, and it suddenly revived them. And the word that was used again and again about these children being brought back to life by giving them a missing hormone was a resurrection. It was that spectacular. The story of the discovery of insulin, which I cover, I can't really summarize in a short nugget, but I cover it at great length in the book because it tells you everything you need to know about science, academia, how medical breakthroughs are made, and it might be a little different to how you think that might all happen.
And how credit is taken or not taken for those breakthroughs. And I was also very struck in your book, there's many examples of people who make these discoveries and are in a position where they could make a lot of money out of them, and the decision-making process involved in that. Yeah.
So there are, exactly as you say, Jenny, there are a number of breakthroughs in the book, and many of the scientists that I talk about in the book, would go on to win Nobel Prizes and other sort of great accolades. So their breakthroughs were of such importance, and exactly as you say, Jenny, they all kind of had this potential golden goose, right? And then the question is, well, what do you do with it? Do I say, well, this discovery has taken me many years, and I put all the work in, and so you can have access to it. Maybe another scientist or doctors or patients, you can have access for it if you're willing to pay for it. Or, as some of the stories in the book show, the ultimate generosity of actually saying this discovery doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the world. And some of those stories that I read, particularly, I guess, where we are now, with lots of breakthroughs relating to tech and AI, and are people saying that today as much? Don't know.
There's a lot to make you feel good about humanity in this book. You can't always find answers for your patients. The mysteries aren't always solved. How do patients respond in those cases?
Those are some of the most tricky consultations. So you might think that if you're coming to the consultation with a diagnosis for the patient, you might think that's a really hard thing, kind of breaking that news to a patient. You've done all these tests or whatever, and you've got this condition, this illness. That often is not the hardest conversation, because often the hardest conversation is somebody who has these really life-shattering symptoms, and you say, we don't know what's wrong with you. And, maybe you've had these various tests, or you've been under our clinic for a long time, and we still don't know what's wrong with you, nor do we have any kind of a fix for this. So that's a really, really hard one. You just have to be super honest. And the quote I use in the book, some of you might remember Donald Rumsfeld, who was one of the Bush's defense secretaries, I think George Bush Jr., and he talked about the unknown unknowns, the things we don't even know that we don't know. And I think a lot of the time in medicine, that's where we are, but we just have to be really honest about that.
You've been a doctor for more than 2 decades, and I'd be interested to hear how you think people's perspectives on menopause have changed, because there was a feeling, certainly a few years ago, that we needed to have honest conversations about the menopause. We needed to talk about, the things that menopausal women are going through. And this has got nothing to do with the fact that I'm a woman in my late 40s, there seems to be a lot of conversation, a lot of discourse around that can be quite frightening. about the perimenopause, about, your life could be genuinely very difficult, or you could be losing your mind because you're about to go through the menopause, you're perimenopausal. Where do you stand on this? Do you think we're in a healthy place now? Do you think we're better at talking about it? What do you think?
We're definitely better at talking about it. So I studied medicine in the 1990s, and I still have a lot of those paper notes that I made in medical school. And I still can't find the word menopause in those notes. So it's the most common hormone deficiency just by virtue of the fact that it will affect 50% of the population. It was never covered in our curriculum. So it is a massive sea change that we're now talking about it. And that's probably happened, what, Jenny, last 5 years? It's kind of exploded in the public discourse, more and more women coming forward. There has been a lot of fear around menopause, both because of the idea, well, what on earth is this going to do to me? I've heard all these stories of sort of things falling apart. But there's also been a ton of fear around HRT. So just to put it in perspective, in menopause, there's estrogen deficiency. The ovaries lose their ability to produce the hormone estrogen. Let's think about other hormone deficiencies. So we talked about cortisol deficiency, a rare situation where the adrenal glands don't make cortisol anymore. You'll take a tablet every day to replace the missing cortisol. Some people here might have hypothyroidism. The thyroid gland loses the ability to make thyroid hormone. You'd be diagnosed, you take a tablet every day to replace the missing hormone. Menopause is the only hormone deficiency situation where it's not the default, where at least a replacement would be offered or have that conversation. Some women don't want it, some women don't need it. For some women, there's a contraindication, sure. But for many women, that conversation doesn't even happen. So we're not there yet, but brilliant that we're even talking about it so much more.
You mentioned unknown unknowns and known unknowns, and I'm now going to ask you a question that's impossible to answer. But do you think there is still so much more yet to be discovered about hormones, or has the pace of discovery about hormones been tailing off?
It's a really great question. I think that there is so much more to know and understand, probably new hormones to come through. Probably the two real biggies in my career was the discovery of leptin. That's a hormone that goes from body fat to brain. Body fat is your body's main fuel tank. We often think of body fat as just being something, I don't know, kind of cosmetically irritating or, but actually body fat is your fuel tank. That's where you store your calories to use down the line when you haven't eaten for a while or you're, jogging or something, right? So leptin is the hormone that goes from body fat to your brain. It's like your body's fuel gauge that tells you how many stored calories you have. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 calories, depending on the size of your fat depot. That hormone that goes from fat to brain, your body's fuel gauge, that was only discovered in 1994. That's pretty cool. GLP-1, obviously, that's been another massive one, and associated gut hormones. There's definitely more to come. I'm excited there's more to come. Where we are in endocrinology, we often make the diagnosis after the problem has occurred. I would love it if there was a way of predicting who needs to be screened, or how do we even stop this happening in the first place. We're quite far off from that point.
And when someone says to you, I'm feeling a bit hormonal, what's your response?
I say great, right? I say this is a really, really good thing. To me as an endocrinologist, hormones are fabulous, wonderful, magical things. They keep us alive. So although hormonal, and colloquially it tends to be used as a pejorative, being hormonal is a very, very good thing. Being hormonal basically makes you human. So try it out tomorrow at work or, with a friend. Say, you seem a bit hormonal today. Say it with a smile, see how it goes down. It's a good thing.
Saira is a consultant. She has written, this is her second book, and she also has 4 kids. So I want to know, how is this possible? Can you just explain? Do you like sleeping? Do you ever sleep? How does this work?
Oh, gosh, what a good question. I think like all of us, when you just have lots of things on, you just, I guess, have to try and make time as and when you can. I did quite a lot of my writing either very first thing in the morning, as we were chatting about in the green room. I have a very little one who somehow his Jedi sense would know that I was up at 4:30 writing. Mommy, I'm like, no, this is my time. What's happening, right? So I tried to fit it in. There is one paragraph in the book that I remember writing outside an escape room, right? The kids were they're in some submarine that was about to explode or something. And I'm sitting there writing, that paragraph, yeah, it's in there, it's a good paragraph. And every now and again, the kids would come out and go, Mommy, I can't find the hat. And if we don't put on the hat, the submarine will explode. It'll be fine. Don't put the hat on, it'll be fine. Right, so you find these sort of pockets of time and you just sort of have to, I guess, go with it. But now the book's written, I'm like, how did I write that book?
So it's not like there is some secret hormone hack that has allowed you to be very productive.
Well, do you know what? That was actually a hormone hack to do my creative, strategic work first thing in the morning, right? Cortisol, magic cortisol, rises first thing in the morning. It's at its peak first thing in the morning.
When you say first thing in the morning, is that to do with the light? Is that to do with your body knowing what time of? I guess your body can't see the clock. It must be to do with the light. Sorry.
Oh, you have a master clock in your brain, and your master clock knows what time of day it is, which is partly why jet lag feels so horrible. And your brain's master clock will essentially set lots and lots of things in motion, so that just before you wake up, you have this massive surge of cortisol. So you're feeling, that's why, like the night before you get into bed, you're like, I'm done. I just can't do anything else. Can't think straight. I feel absolutely awful. Can't answer another email. And then the next morning, you're like, I can do all those things, right? But that's partly cortisol. So cortisol is really high first thing in the morning. So writing first thing in the morning was actually that was a really cool hormone hack because but now I'm not using that hack. I'm answering emails first thing in the morning. That's the wrong use of cortisol. That's the wrong use of cortisol.
Use your cortisol wisely. I think we are going to take some questions now.